importantly, my daughter Sarah is a New Yorker now. She goes to NYU, so she was rooting for the Jets last week.
And she lost.
Well, she lost. But anyway, first of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. And the weather is not particularly inviting, and I know to take you out of your homes on a Tuesday night, not an easy thing. So I do appreciate your coming out and participating with me in this conversation. I think what I'll do is talk to you a little bit about where we are in terms of developing the U.S.-Yemeni relationship, and then we will try to respond to any of your questions and comments afterwards. I have, as you heard, I've been in Yemen for just over 4 months now. I got there on the 24th of September last year and took up my duties there as the ambassador. As I arrived and as we've developed our relationship over the past period of time, what we're trying to do now is to fundamentally redirect the nature of the relationship and to grow it and to push it in a new direction. 2 weeks ago today, in fact, Secretary Clinton visited Yemen and had what I consider to be perhaps the most significant visit by a senior U.S. government official perhaps ever in the history of the bilateral relationship. She came and saw the president. She met with the political opposition. She also had a town hall meeting that included a broad cross-section of Yemeni society, parliamentarians, business, civil society, and students and academic leaders as well. And so while we have had other senior visitors, we had the Secretary of State Baker about 20 years ago. We had the Vice President about 8 years ago. But this is the first time that I'm aware of that we've ever had a senior U.S. government official at that level, at the cabinet level or above, who actually reached out beyond the leadership of the country to try to interact directly with the population, with the broad section of Yemeni civilians and citizens. She had two objectives really in her visit to Sana'a. The first was to talk a little bit about what we're doing together in confronting violent extremism, in combating terrorism. And the Secretary was clear that while we believe that the nature of the relationship, the extent of the cooperation right now is good, still we believe that together we can accomplish more, and of course that there's some urgency in both addressing the security concerns that we have here in the United States, as well as confronting the challenges, the security challenges in Yemen and elsewhere in the world by working together more effectively. And so we talked about that with President Saleh, as well as with the others. But the Secretary also had a second objective that's related but parallel, and that is that we recognize that while the security cooperation that we have is important, and that it's extremely critical that we work with the Yemeni security forces to build up their capabilities and to improve their own capacity to confront violent extremism on their own. We also recognize that it's not going to solve the problem by simply pursuing these kinds of security or military initiatives, but that a permanent solution, a real solution to the problem of violent extremism in Yemen as elsewhere around the world really rests in addressing the political, economic, and social challenges that Yemen confronts. And so the Secretary was there to make a strong point, both to the government as well as to the citizens of Yemen, that the United States is committed to a long-term relationship with Yemen, that we want to build a partnership with Yemen, and that while we want to confront violent extremism, we also understand that we need to find ways to work with the Yemeni people and with the Yemeni government to address these critical challenges that are, at the end of the day, of greatest concern to the Yemeni people. The result of the Secretary's visit, we think, put the U.S.-Yemeni relationship on a new footing and a new direction. We made clear during the Secretary's visit that we don't only look at the Yemeni relationship through the lens of counterterrorism cooperation. We also, I think, established, and this was something that I thought was important based on my own experience there, and based on what we often see in the press here in the United States and in the West concerning what is perceived to be anti-Americanism in Yemen, perceived to be an opposition to U.S. engagement, to U.S. presence, to U.S. policy in Yemen. And what I said to the Secretary before she arrived, and certainly I think what we saw while the Secretary was on the ground in Sana'a, was that Yemenis are not against the United States. There is not anti-Americanism in Yemen. In fact, what my experience has been is that most Yemenis are eager to have U.S. engagement. They're eager to have the United States in Yemen playing a role, helping to address these critical challenges. What Yemenis don't want and don't appreciate is this idea that the United States only looks at Yemen through counterterrorism, and this idea that people have had that as soon as we achieve our counterterrorism goals and objectives, it's the intention of the United States to basically leave. And so the importance, again, of having the Secretary make clear that indeed we're not going to leave, we're going to remain committed, we're going to remain a partner with the Yemeni people. And the significance of the Secretary's visit and the engagement that she had while she was in Sana'a became more important, of course, a few days later when the events transpired in Tunisia and President Ben Ali was forced to leave. So it underlined, I think, the significance of the commitment that the Secretary made to be a partner with the Yemeni people in trying to address issues of political reform and the development of democratic institutions in Yemen. The issue of political reform is an important one, and it's something that I've worked on extensively since I arrived in Sana'a in September. As you all know, the government and the political opposition have been engaged in dialogue, engaged in an effort, national dialogue, to achieve an agreement on constitutional amendments and election law reforms since February of 2009. And the commitment to reach an agreement was reiterated and revalidated in July of 2010. But having made those commitments in September when I arrived, the fact of the matter was that the talks had stalled, the negotiations were deadlocked, and therefore the U.S. Has played an active role in trying to work with both the government and with the opposition in urging them to pursue the negotiation and to reach an agreement on this dialogue about election and constitutional reforms. We've been clear in our position on what it is that we seek to achieve and what we're not trying to achieve. In terms of the positive, what we have made clear is that while we believe that elections are important, we believe that it's more important that the elections, when they're held, are seen as legitimate and credible by the Yemeni people and by the international community. And that they must include at least the opportunity for all of the parties to participate in the election. Doesn't necessarily mean that all the parties have to participate. They may choose not to, but the circumstance, the framework of the agreement should allow all of the parties to feel comfortable in pursuing an election strategy. And that finally, getting the elections right is more important than having the elections on a certain date. In this context, we've been particularly concerned about the issue of the voter registration lists. As you know, that was one of the critical elements in terms of the national dialogue, the need to revise and update the voter registration lists. They have not been updated since 2008. Unfortunately, when the Parliament passed the election reform laws in December, they didn't address the voter registration list. They decided that they were going to keep the old list, which meant that over 1 million Yemeni citizens who were eligible to vote would have been disenfranchised because they were not registered to vote. And we've been very clear about our own view that it was necessary for the government to address that issue. We've continued to discuss it since then. And again, to make it clear that if updating the voter registration list meant that the election was going to be delayed for a brief period of time, it was more important that they did the list than it was to have the election on time. But we were also clear on what we weren't engaged in, what we weren't trying to achieve, What we were saying is that we're not going to get involved in refereeing the negotiations. We're not going to call balls and strikes in the substance of the negotiations to try to pass judgment on whether proposed reforms, proposed constitutional amendments were good or bad. What we said was that whatever the two parties agreed to would have been and would be acceptable to the United States. What was important from our perspective is that the two sides reach an agreement, and whatever satisfied them would satisfy our concerns. It was the concern that we were moving unilaterally towards certain decisions about the elections. The Parliament had passed an election reform law in a process in Parliament that did not achieve all of the recognition of parliamentary process that we believed was important. And we were concerned that we were moving in the same direction in terms of the constitutional amendments package. And therefore, the State Department released a statement at the end of December reminding the parties of the commitments that they had made to negotiate on the